Alright folks, hello and welcome to this video lesson on section 1.5, Formulas and Word Problems. While you're watching this video, please copy down the information from the slides into your notes so that you have them for in-class activities and also for further study. First, we're going to look at 4 important formulas that you'll see throughout this course. We might see some more formulas and talk about a few others, but these are 4 basic ones to get down. So the first one has to do with temperature. And you might remember this from science class, but Celsius and Fahrenheit are the most common temperature formulas or the most common temperature measurements that we'll use. And using the formula C equals 5/9, parentheses F minus 32, you can convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to Celsius. So remember, the C stands for degrees in Celsius, and the F is degrees in Fahrenheit. Let me give you a little bit more room there so you can type that out correctly. And that's Celsius, capital C-E-L-S-I-U-S there. Okay, so using that formula, you could substitute one temperature or another and find out the other one by doing some computation. I'm not going to ask you to memorize that one right now, but have it in your notes for when we use it. The next one is simple interest. And that's how to calculate the interest when you have a simple interest account. So for example, if you put a certain amount of money in the bank, say $5,000, and it earns a simple interest rate of 2% per year for 3 years, you're going to get some money back. Okay, that's not just going to be $5,000 at the end of those 3 years. You're actually going to get money just for keeping that money in the bank. So simple interest, the formula is I, or interest, equals capital P RT. Okay, and that's all multiplication when there's no operation written between the variables. You should know it's multiplication. But what do those things stand for? Well, I just told you that's the interest or the amount that you will get just for leaving your money in the bank. Just for sitting in the simple interest account, you'll earn some cash, and that is called interest. P is the starting amount that you put in, and it's called the principal. If you don't know that word, or if you don't know it in this context, I would write down starting amount below it. But the principal is the starting amount or the initial amount of money you put in. R is the next step. That's your rate of interest. Rate of interest. And this one is crucial. You're going to write it as a decimal. So the rate as a decimal. It might be given in the problem as a percent. For example, they might say you have a 3% rate of interest. Well, you're going to convert that to a decimal when you write it in the formula. That's important. And then lastly, there's the T. Bring that over here. And that's just the time. How long is it in the bank account? And it's given in years. So be careful. You know, it could have a problem where you have 18 months, something like that. 18 months would be 1.5 years. So you'd have to enter that as 1.5 in this formula for the formula to work. And those are the first 2. I'm not going to ask you to memorize that one either. The next 2 I would like you to memorize because they're very important, and they really just, profit especially just follows from the definition of profit. But distance is a formula you'll see over and over and over again. It'll be on the SAT, PSAT. It will be on the GRE if you ever take that, or the ACT, etc. And it's distance equals rate times time, or D equals RT. Okay, and that's where the D stands for the distance traveled, and that's whether it's an object, a person, etc., just the distance traveled. Rate was the R. Okay, the rate that they're traveling at. It could be miles per hour, feet per second, etc. It could be given in different units, but how fast they're traveling. And T is the time that they've been traveling at that rate. So it could be given in seconds, minutes, years, hours, etc. So distance equals rate times time. And by the way, this formula only works if the rate is constant. If you speed up and then slow down and then speed up again, well, then it's not going to work if you try to use this formula, unless instead of taking a constant rate, you take the average rate. So say you speed up and then slow down. Well, this formula will work if you take the average. So I'm going to say it's either a constant rate or it could be the average rate that you travel over a certain period of time. Okay, and I just cleared that so we have some room for profit, but if you have to pause the video and go back to copy that down, please do so. But the profit of a business owner or someone who owns a company or even someone who's doing some private tutoring or perhaps a lemonade stand, and you make some profit that day because you have a lemonade stand. P equals I minus E is the formula given. You don't have to memorize these letters, but you do have to know what profit means and how to calculate it. So profit, which is going to be the P here, is equal to your income, which is the I, how much money you take in, minus your expenses, how much it cost. So for example, say you make $30 at that lemonade stand. That's not bad. But you had to buy the lemonade, and you had to buy the sugar and other things to mix into the drink, maybe the cups, the plastic cups, and your expenses ran you $11. Okay, so then your profit from that lemonade stand would be income minus expenses, and that would be $19. So just subtracting what you paid from what you made will give you the profit. Okay, you subtract what you paid from what you made. And those are 4 formulas. I would like you to memorize the last 2. You should know distance equals rate times time, and you should know how to calculate profit, which is income minus expenses, or you could say what you made minus what you paid, something like that, but just have a way to calculate both of those in a given problem. Okay, now let us look briefly at the planning to solve some word problems. The simple strategy I'd like you to follow, I wrote out in 4 steps here. I mean, you don't have to say like, oh, now I'm on step 1, now I'm on step 2, now I'm on step 3, now I'm on step 4, but this is a general guide. You're going to develop your own general guides as you solve more problems throughout the year. But a big emphasis in Algebra 1 is word problems and interpreting them correctly. So that first item is key. First, you want to read the problem carefully and understand it. And if there's terms or parts of it that you don't understand, you might have to read it again or try to use context clues to figure them out. And the next thing I would suggest is taking note of the key info. Remember, even if you don't know how to do the problem on your homework, you're supposed to be writing down the key information for that problem so that I know that you looked at it. Well, that's also a good practice when you're solving a word problem. Let's say there's 4 different numbers or quantities in the problem. You know they're going to be related some way. You should jot those down before you start doing any of the math. And then number 3, make a plan and solve it. So once you have the key information noted, you can write that down separately, or if you know exactly what to do, you could go right to using that key info to solve. You want to make a plan. The plan could consist of using a formula, maybe using more than one formula. Maybe you draw a diagram and then label numbers on the diagram and do some operations, but there are multiple plans that can be used to solve lots of problems. After you solve it, finally, check if your answer is reasonable. Check, 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 check. Sometimes you'll be able to plug in a number and see that it makes sense. Other times, you'll just be able to see, well, is it reasonable or is it not? If you come up with a problem, say you're like, I don't know, calculating the chance of rain for tomorrow, and you get something like there's a 230% chance of rain. Well, obviously that makes no sense. So then it means you made some type of mistake in your calculation because you can't have over 100% chance of rain. So just keep an eye on that and make sure you do things and check if they're reasonable. Do them properly. Let's look at one quick example using a formula. A diver uses a sonar device to track the distance from his diving partner. The device sends a sound wave that travels 4,800 feet per second. For how many seconds will the wave have to travel to reach a partner 960 feet away? All right, first we read the problem carefully. Hope you understand what's going on. They're in the ocean. They're shooting waves at each other, sound waves, to figure out how far he is from his partner. And the wave travels at this rate, 4,800 feet per second. That's key info that we're noticing there. And we want to know how many seconds it's going to take to reach the partner that's 960 feet away. All right, so kind of highlighting, reading carefully and highlighting key info. We're now ready to make a plan to solve the problem. This is going to require a formula, and hopefully you recognize that distance equals rate times time will be the appropriate formula here. Now, in this case, we're given certain parts of this formula, and we're going to find the unknown part. Since the problem asks for how many seconds, that t is going to be the unknown. We don't know how many seconds, and we're going to find that by substituting the other values. Distance is 960 feet away. That's how far the partner is, so I can put that in for D. We want to know how long it's going to take to travel 960 feet. And then the rate it travels is 4,800 feet per second. So I'll put 4,800 in for R, and then T, we don't know what it is. I'll just write the letter T there. To solve this problem for T, we want to isolate T, and we'll divide both sides of the equation by 4,800. And you will arrive at an answer of T equals, and then you could divide these fractions. The zeros will cancel out, divide by 10. 96 and 480. 2 goes into both of those. It looks like 4 will go into both of those as well. You can actually 16 goes into both of those. I just recognized that. So if you divide each of those by 16, you get 6 on the top. 96 divided by 6 is, or 96 divided by 16 is 6. 480 divided by 16 is going to be 30. And then that fraction will reduce to 1 over 5. So T is going to equal 1/5 of a second, or 1/5 seconds. Or if you prefer, you can write that as a decimal 0.02 or 0.2 seconds as your final answer for how long it'll take to reach the diver. Now, does that make sense? Well, I think it does, because, it's going to travel over about 5,000 feet in a second. So this guy's way less than 5,000 feet, so it should be well less than a second. And it is traveling pretty fast, these sound waves, so they should get to each other pretty quickly, and 0.2 makes sense as a quick time. If I got something like 30 seconds or a minute, well, then I'd have to go back and see that I did some work wrong and find what I did wrong. Briefly, recap of section 1.5, we looked at 4 formulas, and I want you to memorize the ones for distance and profit. We talked about a word problem plan, some steps that you can follow to solve word problems. And then lastly, we looked at an example with a divert where we had to solve for T using distance equals rate times time. Thank you for watching this video lesson.